Okay, this tutorial is going to show you how to draw a diagram that helps explain the formation of the arete and the pyramidal peak. Now, you should have watched a video already which will have explained what these two features are and the key processes that help form them. And you will have also seen in your class notes a diagram and a photograph that shows you the features. So if we just have a quick look at that before drawing our diagram. So an arete is a narrow ridge leading up to the summit of the mountain. We can see one there, we can see one there, and we can see a third one here. The pyramidal peak is the summit of that mountain. And the aretes are actually made by corries forming on more than one place on a mountainside. So here we can see two corries forming back to back. You can see the same thing in the photograph here. Here's a glacier, and that's obviously the thing that has created the corrie in the first place through erosion processes. And over here we can see a second corrie, and as a matter of fact, just behind here there is a third corrie. And there will actually be, on the other side of the mountain, possibly a fourth corrie. Now what we can then see is because we have these corries eroding into the mountain, they are all creating these narrow ridges that are leading to the summit of this mountain, which is a pyramidal peak there. So those are the two features we're looking at. Now, how can we draw diagrams that will help show this? Now, you've already been introduced to this process when you did the corrie, and we're actually going to be largely dealing with the corrie explanation when we explain the arete pyramidal peak. The first thing you're going to need is a sheet of A4 paper. We are going to be drawing a number of diagrams, at least two, and those diagrams will have annotations around them, just like we did with the corrie. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you have a piece of paper, and when you have it, you want to write this title onto your piece of paper, because you'll be then photographing your diagrams at the end and inserting them into your class notes. Okay, so assume you've got your piece of paper now and that you've written the title that's on the screen. And the first thing you want to do is you want a diagram which is start of the Ice Age. So that's a little subtitle you're going to want to write. Okay, and you now want to draw a diagram which shows a hollow on a mountain top and another hollow on the other side of the mountain. Okay, and we want to add into it a glacier. So we're just going to draw a glacier here. There's our glacier number one, and here's our second glacier. Now, as with all diagrams, it's not the quality of the drawing that is the most important thing. It's actually the labels that you add. So let's add in some labels. So what have we got here? We have a glacier, okay? And to get our first mark, what we can do is we can actually, rather than just write glacier, we can say glacier forms in a hollow from snow building up in layers and compressing into ice. Okay, so that is your actual first mark, because you've told me how this glacier forms. Another key label we're going to have to add to our diagram is the fact that we have a hollow. So we want to know that that is our hollow. Okay, and I'm writing it twice because I've got two hollows. Okay, and the final thing in our diagram up here is we have at the moment, it's not a pyramidal peak, it's quite rounded. So we have a rounded summit of mountain. Okay, so there is our key labels for our start of the Ice Age. So let's just move on to our next diagram. You want to draw this on the same piece of paper. This is during the Ice Age. Okay, so let's start with the diagram outline. So first thing we want to do is draw our hollows, but this time we want to exaggerate our hollows. And here's our other hollow. Okay, and we're going to put our glacier into both of them. The glacier can actually come out of the hollow if you want, because glaciers do grow larger than their hollows and then head off downhill. And we want to put an arrow, just like we did with the Corrie diagram, because we want to be showing that these glaciers are moving in their hollows, as well as moving on out down the mountain. Okay. So what labels are we going to want to add at this point? Well, the first thing is we're going to want to show what that is. Okay. So if you remember from your Corrie diagram, this is what we call rotational slip. Okay. So Corrie moves, not Corrie, I beg your pardon, not Corrie. Glacier moves due to gravity, leading to a process known as rotational slip, which erodes the hollow deeper. Okay. Next thing we want to do is we want to show that our hollow is actually moving backwards in the mountain. So because we've got corries on two sides, they're actually eroding towards each other. Okay. And that's what these two arrows are going to illustrate. So let's just show that that's what we're trying to show by putting a little arrow and adding a label which says two corries are being eroded back into the mountain towards each other. Due to plucking and abrasion. Okay, now we've introduced these two words, plucking and abrasion, so there is an opportunity to get more marks here if we say what plucking and abrasion are. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is try to remember what is plucking. So this is where, you could say plucking is where if you wanted to, but I've just got an arrow pointing to the word plucking. This is where ice sticks to rock and rips it up. Okay, so that's one of the erosional processes. Our second erosional process, abrasion, is where rock, or this is where rock held in the glacier scrapes into the mountain a bit like sandpaper. We call it the sandpapering effect, if you can remember that. Wearing the mountain away. Okay, so there's that label there. Okay, so we're picking up loads of marks at the moment. Final thing before we finish off with our final diagram, which is also going to bring us to the pyramidal peak. We have a narrow wall appears between the two corries as they row backwards towards each other. And this is our first of our two features. So this is actually us getting to our arete. So if you're going to get to the arete, this is where you can finish if the arete was what the exam question was. If you are asked about the pyramidal peak, you've got to go one step further forward. So arete is formed between two corries as they erode towards each other. This is a narrow ridge, which can be further weathered after the ice age due to freeze or weathering. Now, you could have another paragraph or short paragraph that tells me what freeze or weathering is, and that, by the way, is where the water gets into cracks, and when it freezes at night, the water expands. It actually expands up to 9% of its volume. This puts pressure on the cracks, and eventually the cracks open up and rocks fall off the mountain. that's what leads to scree slopes forming at the bottom of slopes. If you were to add that label, the examiner would give you credit. Now, we need to add one final diagram if we're moving towards the pyramidal peak. So let's add our third and final diagram. Here we are, this is what we're going to have. So this is all of our pieces together, but I'm going to show you how to draw this. So let me just skip back and add this diagram in. So what we want to do now is we want to show multiple aretes forming on a mountainside. And we want to show that we've got our corrie. So this is my corrie number 1, and this is the steep back wall at the back of the corrie. I'm just drawing in. You can imagine that from the corrie diagram. And here's my second corrie, and here's the steep back wall of corrie number 2. Okay. So we're after the Ice Age. We've also got our tarn, that you might find a wee tarn inside your corries. You don't have to find tarns, these little round lakes. They don't necessarily appear in all corries, but they are often present. So we can add them in. So what are we going to say? Well, we're going to draw some arrows here to our 3 aretes. Okay. And when we're going to add a label, when 2 or more arete corries erode into a mountain, they create multiple aretes. These aretes meet at the summit of the mountain as a pyramidal peak, which is no longer rounded. It is further sharpened after the Ice Age due to freeze, thaw, weathering. Okay, so this final one, I'd like to do this in your notes, but as a little exam tip, you have to pay attention to the question, because if you're asked about the arete, this last diagram is not necessary, okay? Because this last diagram is telling us about the pyramidal peak. We do have some other things on this that we're going to want to add. Just a few little labels too, just for the neatness of our diagram, so we know where we are. So this is a corrie, just so we remember that. And we want to make sure that when we look back at this in a year's time and revising for an assessment, for example, we know what these things that we've drawn on our diagrams actually are. And that there would be a tarn. Okay, so there you go. You have a diagram that now explains through all of the 3 steps. This one final diagram is missing one final thing. This is after the Ice Age. So we've got step 1, which is a little cross-section diagram. Step 2, which is all of the main marks for the arete. And step 3, the after the Ice Age. What you want to do is make sure that you photograph these diagrams all on your one sheet of A4 and upload it and place this image into your assignment.